Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called The Raven Duchess. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy. For a woman, the goal in this world is to get married. The moment you get to 23 and are still unmarried, you'll be labeled an old spinster. Or leftover ladies in Chinese culture. Thus, every girl is always on the hunt for the best man out there. Of course, the perfect husband should be young, wealthy, powerful, good personality, and most of all, handsome. The two girls are discussing this at a friend's upcoming wedding. When they talk about old spinsters, they look towards Melissa Tanya, a 32-year-old unmarried noblewoman. Rude much? Annoyed, Melissa leaves after paying for her meal. It's not like she hasn't received any marriage proposals at all. Even though her family had become bankrupt, proposals still came in since she was a noble. It's just that they aren't her type. Very understandable. Melissa goes back to her jewelry shop called Crescendo Jewel, only to find an audacious gold-lined carriage blocking its entrance. As she enters her shop, her assistant immediately greets her. She asks if something was wrong after seeing Melissa's dark expression. Melissa looks in the mirror and doesn't see anything unusual. She brushes off her assistant's worry as she settles in on her desk. Before Melissa can conduct an appraisal, her assistant interrupts her and says there was a customer waiting for her inside the room. Melissa goes inside only to find the most famous eligible bachelor in the Annabelle Kingdom, Louis Winterfeld, the Duke of Winterfeld. And oh boy, with his blonde hair and blue eyes, he only needs a pair of wings to become an angel. Melissa assumes he was here for an appraisal request, but the Duke denies that and tells her he's there for a personal matter. He then presents a document on the table. It's a contract marriage proposal. He wants to marry Melissa and divorce after 2 years. Oh, what a surprise! Melissa is shocked to receive both marriage and divorce contracts in one sitting. The Duke tries to tempt her by saying she'll get 30% of the Duchess's assets as alimony if she accepts his proposal. But Melissa declines. She thinks Louis is using her to cover up his real lover. Yeah, like, what's his deal? Aside from being a great deal. He clears up her misunderstanding by saying he doesn't have a lover. During the duration of their marriage, he promises to be a faithful husband. And the reason he's picked her is because she's the most skillful jewel appraiser in the kingdom. And she's an unmarried noblewoman to boot. Talk about marriageable qualities, am I right, guys? He divulges that in 6 months, the royal family will hold a jewel exhibition. Only nobles are invited, and among them, she's the best appraiser. I guess he really does have a valid reason. Just as he talks about the treasure cove, someone interrupts outside. A woman named Julie is on the floor crying for Melissa's help. The trio then moves their discussion to Louis's carriage. Julie apologizes for interrupting an important conversation between the two and tells them why she's there. As a maid for Viscount Ronilda's family, she was recently promoted to handle the dresses and jewelries for the household. Viscount Ronilda's daughter has a rare emerald ring, which she boasts to be from the magnificent See of Oswald. But today, they found out it was an imitation. The trio continues to discuss the Oswald emerald, which Melissa highlights as one of the most expensive of all emeralds. The maid then explains to Melissa and Duke Louis that her master's emerald all of a sudden became an imitation. With no other theory, the household where the maid works now believes that an inside thief was involved. Since she's in charge of the jewelry, everyone in the house suspects she did it. In my opinion, that's too coincidental. The maid knows she cannot prove she's not the thief, but she swears to the two that she did not do it, especially since she had worked there when she was still 12 years old. She then begs Tanya to help her, considering that she has solved other cases before. Ooh, our girl is a detective! Wishing to help her, Melissa worries that it will be hard to find an excuse to look at the controversial jewel. Louis then butts in, saying he can be of assistance. I'm not going to lie, that was smooth. Thanks to Louis, Melissa successfully enters Viscount Ronilda's home as his business partner. After some small talk, Louis tells the patriarch that he wishes to see the infamous jewel. Louis then convinces him, and they are able to take a look at it. Melissa then wears her gloves as she holds the jewel towards the sunlight. She then tells everyone that the jewel is a doublet emerald. Wait, so it was an actual emerald? The Ronilda family gets excited about the fact that the jewel is a real emerald, but Melissa shoots them down, saying that it is still an imitation of an Oswald emerald. deserve. We then learn that a doublet is actually an imitation technique. By thinly slicing jewels of the same color or of good quality and layering the low-quality jewels underneath them. Melissa notes that imitators hide the blemishes of the jewel with oil treatment, but something bothers her about it. The jewel is neatly connected with no glue whatsoever. After finding out where they bought the jewel, Louis then points out that Viscount Ronilda actually knew from the start that it was not an Oswald emerald. Sweating in buckets, the Viscount explains that they bragged to others that their daughter would be wearing an Oswald emerald. To avoid social embarrassment, they place the blame on the maid instead. Ugh, these conniving people! The maid falls to the floor, feeling devastated that she was used by her masters. Louis then admonishes the Ronilda couple with a look while announcing their client is free from her charges. They bow their heads in apology, feeling quite guilty. Before they leave, Melissa asks to borrow the doublet emerald for a day. The two then head to a place to have the jewelry checked inconspicuously. Thus, Louis magically changes his hair to black, catching Melissa off guard. She then concludes that maybe black-haired men are her type. Don't worry, Mel. I think I got a thing with black-haired men too. Add in red eyes, then it's a perfect combination. Louis and Melissa enter the jewelry store. There, Melissa notices how big the building is and all of its accessories. After some observation, Melissa notices that there are no rare stones or expensive jewelry that the aristocracy would typically buy. Instead, they're for middle-class people. Honestly, I'd be good with these jewelries too, if I had the money, of course. Which I don't, by the way. Seeing the VIP room, Melissa understands that the real gems are inside. Only the rich could get in, which the store clerks are always on the lookout for. Discrimination at its finest. But with just a gesture from Louis, a store clerk approaches them and invites the two to the VIP room. Melissa is hesitant since they might figure out their identities, but Louis cajoles her into thinking that it will be all right in the end. Aw, they look cute like that. Inside, the two sit on a sofa while the best products of the store are being displayed to them. Melissa marks that these jewels are definitely real gems, but are not similarly made to the imitated Oswald emeralds. Suddenly, her eyes land on the opal stone. A clerk comes and explains it is a Waylow opal with a beautiful honeycomb pattern. Melissa silently agrees that it is beautiful, but knows that it is a doublet. I wish my eyes were this sharp. After taking the opal out, Melissa notes that it has been processed like the imitated emerald. With a smile on her lips, she turns to the clerk to ask who designed the opal. The clerk now looks like a deer caught in headlights. Melissa continues and says she personally wants to meet the designer, but the store clerk dissuades her by saying that she cannot divulge personal employee information. Girl, I think it's time you run instead. Louis then butts in and asks to meet the store owner instead. Before the store clerk could even give an excuse, another voice suddenly spoke. A black-haired man and a red-headed woman come into the room. We then learn that he is Louis's cousin. Louis greets him with a bow while making Melissa bow as well. He then introduces his cousin, who is actually the crown prince. Ah, that explains the haughty look. Melissa and Louis then leave the store as he expresses that he does not like his cousin. At that point, Melissa does not know that the Duke's family is a relative of the imperial family. Louis then asks her if he should have bought that opal since they could not get much information, but Melissa tells him she found out the initials of the artisan and will continue the next day. Before they part ways, Louis hands her an invitation card to come see him whenever. Embarrassed by his words, Melissa tells him she won't go. Mel, that blush tells us a different answer. Just cave in. We already did. But 3 days later, she goes to his mansion. And caved in she goes. After getting a jump scare, she is ushered to the greenhouse to wait. There, she meets the blonde Louis again. While Melissa is still blushing at the sight of him, Louis then teases her, saying that blondes must be her type. Melissa stutters to defend herself, saying that her preferences are not important right now and that they should focus on the case. Louis then pulls out a box while saying vague words, making it look like he's going to propose. Ugh, why do you tease our girl like that? Melissa's face goes red, and she asks him if that is the reason why she's here. Louis explains that the case and the proposal are actually the same issue. Louis explains the events of 30 years ago, a bloodbath that happened because of the fight for the throne. The current king killed 3 of his brothers while forcing his young sister to marry. Karma better come for this man, he's horrible. The 5th prince renounced his right to the throne. He declared that they would remain dukes and pledged to give the king the rarest and most valuable jewel to the imperial family. With a hollowed smile, the king told the fifth prince to make a new crown out of those jewels. We return to the present, and Louis expresses his desire to find a new solution to that. He leans over to Melissa and tells her he is counting on her. While still leaning, Louis points out that Melissa likes him. Melissa is left without any words as she is caught in Louis's gentle and unwavering approach. Mel, I hope you knock him down in the next chapter. Melissa breaks the tension by putting the opal between them and asking what the Winterfield situation has to do with the imitations. Louis then explains that the jewelry store they visited is using someone else's name in their bank account. The real owner of the store is none other than the Crown Prince. I knew it was him. There was something fishy about him. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince is raging. He gets mad that his underlings couldn't find out why Duke Louis Winterfield came to his store that other day. Suddenly, a blonde woman with opalescent eyes comes in and asks for his attention. The woman is actually the fiancée of the Crown Prince, Princess Athryn Blanche. She's such a beauty. This girl is wasted on him, that's for sure. She asks the prince to attend a party with her, but he explains that he can't join since he's busy. But his underling advises him that it's best that he attend the party to stop any bad rumors about their relationship. Left with no choice, the king tells Athryn he will go. He further emphasizes that it will only be this one time that he will attend a party with her. His attitude is nasty. At a later time, we see Melissa back at her store, tired. Her assistant greets her with tea and asks Melissa about their discussion with the Duke. Melissa tells her she rejected the proposal since her store is top priority. Her assistant then hands her an invitation to a party where Count Gisella's wife will be publicly showing their family heirloom. It looks like something big will happen next. Melissa checks her clothes and hair before heading out. Her assistant notices that Melissa's clothes look different than usual. Melissa reasons that nobles are ruthless if one does not wear the right clothes for the occasion. Plus, Count Gisella's wife is an old regular of hers. Yes, wearing your best is always a good choice when it comes to big events like this. Melissa then shares with her how nice Count Gisella's wife is to her and how clever the Countess is at strengthening the Gisella family's values. Melissa's assistant wonders why she's still married to the horrible Count when she can leave him. In the carriage, Melissa points out the window that times are changing now. But she then explains that getting a job based on your expertise is different. Not many will be kind to a fallen girl going against the kingdom of Annabelle's social norms. They arrive at Gisella's residence, and immediately Melissa can hear the negative whispers of the guests about the Gisella family. Soon, Melissa finds the Count's wife, but her dress got purposely stepped on by another noble. Not deterred, Melissa heads to do her work. That's right, don't let them get to you, girl. We then see Athryn silently suffering the pain in the back of her feet while other noble girls hover over her. But then her fiancé comes, scaring the others away. He talks down to her, impatient for the main event to start. Ugh, when is karma coming for this guy? Melissa then meets up with the Count's wife and moves together to where the opal will be displayed. The guests are getting excited to see the heirloom that had been hidden for 40 years. As everyone waits, a butler comes running, calling out for the Count's wife. He whispers to her that the heirloom looks like an ordinary rock. Uh-oh, doublet jewelry alert! Count Giselle then hears the whispers of the guests, making him turn livid and take it out on his wife. After she falls to the ground, the butler comes and shows the box where the heirloom jewel should have been. In the box, only a smooth stone can be seen. Upon closer inspection, Melissa tells everyone that the jewel is here. Annoyed at her, the Count threatens her to pay if what she says is not true. Melissa agrees to it, but makes a deal with the Count that he will apologize to his wife when she proves it to be true. The Crown Prince comes forward and tells the Count to take her challenge. He continues that only higher-ranked people are allowed to mediate incidents, but he will allow her to do so since he's curious if she can do it. This guy is so egotistical. Melissa then asks the Countess to have the servants prepare the stuff she needs. She then turns to her assistant named Julie. She tells her to bring that from the store. In the meantime, we see Louis having a sword duel. Why does he look like he just came from a shower? Not complaining with the wet look, though. Louis's butler asks if it is all right for him not to show up at the party where Melissa is. Louis explains that it might be best not to show his face around her for now and that he has other important things to handle. Louis then learns that the crown prince, Laureld, is also at the party. He then asks his butler to send someone to her so that she will not experience anything unpleasant when Prince Laureld is around. Too late, bud. Back at the Gisela mansion, Julie returns with the thing Melissa asked for. With the preparations complete, Melissa can begin. A person in the crowd asks if the things prepared are enough, but Melissa explains that an opal has two components. One component is silica, and the other is something she will restore. Time to see some science! Melissa begins by pouring a specific amount of water into a cup with a drop of the special ingredient that Julie brought. She then wraps the opal stone with a cloth and lets it soak in the mixture. She then tells everyone that an hour is needed to see the final results. Prince Laureld then begins to overthink that all of this is an elaborate plan from Louis. He then thinks of using his fiancée to put Melissa in her place. Of all the rotten! This guy needs a smack in the head. After an hour finally passes, everyone waits back in the hall for the results. Melissa comes and shows everyone the now shiny and vibrant 800-carat black opal. As everyone gazes at the stone, they can't doubt it. Well, I can't blame them. It looks really pretty now. Prince Laureld tells everyone to be quiet and then approaches Melissa. He says her full name and commands her to explain what the other component was. He is thinking that he can monopolize the special chemical she used, thereby controlling the jewelry industry. If he does accomplish that, he will deal a huge blow to Louis' finances. Karma, I'm still waiting here. Hello? Melissa then says that the other component is water. This surprises everyone, and she further explains. Opals have a certain water content in them, which gives them the multicolored brilliance they show off. When opals are stored in dry conditions for a long time, they lose their shine. Okay, dang! You learn something new even in romantic stories like this! The water she used earlier came from the Gisela estate, the same water the opal was born from. It is a jewel that was found when the land was dug up to build the current mansion. Everyone claps in amazement and in recognition of Melissa's work. She then turns to the Count and reminds him of their deal. Yes, we stan a firm queen. The Crown Prince agrees to that, and then approaches Melissa, telling him to apologize to his fiancée. This surprises everyone, and he explains that the lady with the highest social position should be the one to moderate. Suddenly, a man comes to announce that Duke Winterfeld's carriage has just arrived. Another man with distinct blue hair comes, who is known as the Duke's right arm. He is Ryan Kramatz and is tasked with escorting Melissa. Now that is the main event we're waiting for. The crowd is silent as they witness the scene unfolding at Count Gisela's party. Melissa is taken aback by the Crown Prince's sudden question about her relationship with Louis. She then attempts to clear any misunderstandings, but is instantly silenced by the Duke's right-hand man, Sir Kramatz. In this moment, Melissa is contemplating as to whether she will tell the truth or grab the opportunity and use Duke Winterfeld's influence in order to escape her awaiting punishment. She chooses the former, opting to reveal the truth behind her and Louis' relationship. We stan an honest girl boss, y'all. She wholeheartedly tells the waiting Crown Prince that she and Louis are nothing but mere acquaintances who give business advice to each other and nothing more. The Crown Prince, being the greedy lunatic that he is, only sarcastically laughs at this and tells Melissa that he isn't naive enough to believe that there is nothing going on between her and the Duke. In the Crown Prince's mind, he has already concluded that she is Louis' woman. If you already made up your mind, what's the use of asking, dum-dum? The scene then shifts to a narration that details the truth behind the succession of the Annabelle crown. The Crown Prince, although being the current heir to the throne, is in fact an illegitimate child, which makes Louis second in line to the throne since the Duke's father and the Crown Prince's father, the current king, are brothers. The Crown Prince holds the belief that the king is keeping the Duke alive in order to constantly compare both him and the Duke from each other, which infuriates him even more. Fortunately, the Crown Prince and his fiancée leaves the party, but with the belief that Melissa is hiding a secret technique in the bottle that she used that the Duke knows of and plots how he'll take that information from her. Afterwards, Sir Kramatz also escorts Melissa and Julie back to her home. In the carriage, Sir Kramatz curiously asks the contents of Melissa's mystery bottle and is answered by plain old oil that she used to polish her jewelry. Uh-oh, Mr. Crown Prince will not be happy with that info, though. Melissa then asks whether she is still of use to the Duke, because why would he go as far as to send his aide to help her escape? But Sir Kramatz is also clueless. hinting that maybe Louis fell for her at first sight, which baffles her. Soon after, they arrive at Lady Melissa's home, and Sir Kermetz bids his goodbye to the ladies. Melissa's resolve is put to the test when, first, she is told that the pearls she ordered did not arrive due to violent storms and a greedy high-ranking official, who has taken all the pearls for himself. Second, a business partner of hers announced that he is withdrawing his business transactions with her due to the decline of the supplies in their mines. And as a final blow, one of her top clients canceled his order and terminated his contract with her. Let's take a guess who's behind all this, shall we? Lord Modena is rich and powerful in his own right, so Melissa believes that it had to be someone more powerful than most counts who is behind the Baron's sudden withdrawal. It dawns on her that there is no other person other than the Crown Prince that holds this much power and influence, that even the rich Baron cannot do anything but submit. Typical show of power, huh? Petty prince. Meanwhile, while she is deliberating possibilities, she notices a woman with a weird disguise hiding behind a tree. She thinks that the woman is a customer of hers, but as the woman approaches and removes her disguise, it reveals the Crown Prince's fiancée, Princess Blanche. You really gotta think of a better disguise, Princess. That's awfully odd. Princess Blanche approaches the tense atmosphere and asks if she can talk to Melissa privately. She leaves the store under Lady Julie's care and takes off with Princess Blanche for their talk. However, before they leave, Melissa notices that the princess is wearing a disguise and proceeds to ask if the princess snuck out of the mansion, and she nods as confirmation. Melissa then suggests that they change into new attire before they step out. Yes, please, because that's some fashion crime. It is after they change their clothes that Princess Blanche notes that they are wearing men's clothing. She voices out her worries about whether it will be fine for them to wear such clothes. Melissa replies that the princess should not worry much because based on her past experience, during the beginnings of her business, men tend to dismiss her if she wore dresses while doing business transactions. After their quick wardrobe change, Melissa and Princess Blanche head out into the streets. The princess then voices her relief to be able to venture outside the palace walls without the aid of her attendants. This sentiment makes Melissa curious as to how the princess managed to escape. The princess, grinning, answers that she jumped over the mansion wall, which stuns Melissa. We gotta give it to the princess. She has guts. As the ladies arrive in front of the store that sold the magically processed double opal, aka where Louis and Melissa first introduced themselves as a couple, their attention shifts on a more serious note when Princess Blanche reveals the true reason why she goes out of her way to talk with her about her jewelry store. She discloses that the store, among others, is owned by the Crown Prince. Upon hearing this, Melissa questions the reason behind the Crown Prince's actions towards her business. Moreover, she is also confused as to why the princess is helping her, seeing that the princess is the Crown Prince's fiancé. Question after question, will Melissa finally find the answer she needs? Princess Blanche explains the history behind Annabelle's royal family and the beginnings of the now hostile relationship between the Crown Prince and the Duke of Winterfeld. She tells Melissa that the king is a cruel man, detailing that he favored his nephew, the Duke, more than his own son. In the past, Princess Blanche reveals that the king brought the young Duke of Winterfeld into the royal household to keep him in line under the guise of doing all this for the young Duke's sake. Gossip circulated within the Annabelle household about the king's obvious favor towards the young Duke, and eventually, the Crown Prince overheard one about the king using the young Duke to test him, which led to the hanging of the servant who spread the gossip. Talk about being this intense, bro! Fast forward a couple of years, and numerous counts of being pitted against each other, the Crown Prince and the Duke's relationship grew strained. Princess Blanche retells that, though the Crown Prince remains the most legitimate heir to the throne, he felt insecure of the Duke, which is why he took an interest in the jewelry business. The line of business that the Duke of Winterfeld was also involved in. In short, he got issues with self-confidence and badly needs therapy. Moreover, Princess Blanche hints to Melissa that the Crown Prince is suspicious of her because he believes that she is a mage possessing unique skills related to jewels. Melissa instantly denies the claim, saying that it was nothing but a misunderstanding on the Crown Prince's part. Melissa then voices her concerns about the trouble that the princess's information might bring to the princess, but the princess reassures her that despite the certainty of the scolding she'll get once she gets back, she knows that it is the right thing to do. Women supporting women, we absolutely stan. They both decide to part ways after that, and Melissa is left with more questions regarding the Duke of Winterfeld's true intentions. She also contemplates whether she'll debunk the Crown Prince's misunderstanding or not. The scene changes and shows that Lady Melissa finally accepts the Duke's marriage proposal. but under certain conditions. Seriously, Melissa, with the Duke's handsomeness, we will accept his proposal with no conditions at all. Definitely a free yes. After the sudden shift in Lady Melissa's decision, the Duke, although still puzzled, invites her to sit down and they talk about her conditions for accepting the marriage proposal. She explains that she met Lady Blanche the other day and the princess warned her about the Crown Prince's intentions. Though she is open to the Duke's proposal, internally she is still apprehensive of the Duke's real motives towards her. Her decision to accept the Duke's proposal is shown to be spurred on by something that happened in her shop before their meeting in the Duke's office. Heaps of garbage were thrown at her storefront and another of her shop's trading partners refused to work with her again. On top of that, she is told to pay their balance in advance. Melissa is torn between pleading her case to the Crown Prince and clearing the misunderstanding between them, or just letting it be, seeing that she isn't sure if something will change if she does so. With everything piling up, Melissa decides that the best course of action is to accept the Duke's marriage proposal. Her conditions are, first, she asks for protection and aid for her and her shop. Second, she proposes that they make a formal contract with a seal for their setup. And lastly, she clarifies that if her and the Duke's work is done, they can terminate the contract even if the 2-year deadline is not yet finished. Afterwards, while the contract is being prepared, the Duke charms her with questions that inquire about the lady's personal likes and preferences. Melissa answers him swiftly with straightforward answers, but is wondering about the importance of such questions. The Duke then explains that despite their marriage being contractual, in order for them to outwardly perform their duties, they will have to show how passionately in love they are with each other. Who doesn't love a good fake dating trope? The Duke takes it further by saying that a man in love should know the basic tastes of the woman he loves, and asks Melissa about her preference on endearments. She visibly swoons at this and immediately tells the Duke that using her first name is fine. A laugh bubbles out of Louis's mouth, and he decides to call Melissa his Dear Melissa. Later on, Melissa closes her jewelry store temporarily due to her and the Duke's marriage contract. She initially tells Lady Julie, her assistant, to find another job in the capital during the duration of the temporary closure of the store, but adds that if Julie doesn't have anywhere to go yet, Melissa will list her as her lady-in-waiting. Julie, having heard of her lady's request, is ecstatic to say the least. Time passes by. Louis and Melissa meet again for the lady's dress fitting. The Duke accompanies her and is quite surprised by her beauty as her new dress is shown. However, their moment is interrupted by the sudden arrival of the Crown Prince with another woman in the shop. Really, Mr. Crown Prince? Really? Poor Princess Blanche. The arrival of the Crown Prince, along with the unfamiliar woman in his arm, which is revealed to be Viscountess Razia, dampens the mood inside the shop. The Crown Prince's proud display of another lover other than his fiancée in broad daylight obviously rubs Melissa the wrong way. Ugh, the audacity of this man. Moreover, the Viscountess's snarky remarks towards Melissa aren't as subtle as she wants them to be. She is under the impression that Melissa is hired by Louis, outrightly telling her that it will be beneficial for her jewelry business as she can elevate her status. However, Viscountess Razia's rude comment about her dress and the absence of her partner during formal events garners a response from Louis. Louis grabs Melissa's waist and tells their audience of two that she is, in fact, his fiancée. The Crown Prince comments that he did not hear of this news, to which the Duke replies that he did not intend to tell anyone just yet. The Duke makes a subtle, sarcastic jab at the Crown Prince for meddling with Melissa's business, saying that the Crown Prince went as far as to close her business in order for her to focus on their wedding preparations. To add salt to the wound, Louis states that unlike His Highness's marriage, what he and Lady Melissa have is a love marriage. Oof, we are loving the shade. He then proceeds to carry Melissa bridal style and bids the couple goodbye. When Louis puts her down, she asks him the purpose behind her dressing up. The Duke, without revealing anything, brings Melissa to his mansion and introduces her as the mistress of the House of Winterfell to the whole household. Long story short, the household is exhilarated and welcomes her with open arms. Afterwards, the Duke tells Melissa that he plans to introduce her as his fiancée during a jewelry auction that they are going to host, seeing as many nobles will participate. Furthermore, he piqued her interest by revealing that a blue diamond that is said to bring misfortune will be up for sale at this auction. Louis explains the history behind the diamond. He recounts the 400 years of bloody history that followed the gemstone, detailing how it has been put up for auction many times, earning the attention of everyone. Melissa confirms that the Duke is interested in acquiring the said gem. Louis stirs their current conversation by showing off their relationship to the Winterfeld household. He catches her off guard by kissing her on the cheek, but Melissa stuns the Duke even more by returning the favor and also kissing him on the cheek. Atta girl! Outperform Mr. Blondie. After their short performance, she leaves the Duke speechless and tells him that she'll ask the maid to show her around the mansion while he finishes his work. She is then escorted all around the mansion by Mrs. Robin, the head of household. During their tour, they stumble upon a huge portrait of the previous mistress of the Winterfeld household, and Melissa notices the familiar jewel she finds on the necklace worn by the mistress. Mrs. Robin also discloses that the late mistress was the first one to invent the polishing technique developed in the Winterfeld family. If only the mistress did not suffer a certain misfortune, Mrs. Robin believes that the Duke's situation would have been different. This leaves Melissa wondering what the misfortune could be. The room is silent as Mrs. Robin reveals the misfortune that the previous mistress of the House of Winterfeld experienced. Unfortunately, when the Duke was still young, his mother, the late mistress, was poisoned and the mastermind was not identified. Poor Duke. Mrs. Robin then tells Melissa that she is aware that Melissa is not used to political conflict and that the Duke believes that he can protect her if ever the need arises. However, Mrs. Robin advises her that the lady herself should learn how to protect herself by avoiding the threats thrown at her. The head housekeeper also shares that Melissa is the first woman the Duke has ever introduced to the household, and knowing this, she hopes that the Duke's fiancé will share the same sentiment as the people in their household, who only wish that the Duke never experiences what he experienced in the past. Despite her aversion towards any private household matters, she decides that as the new Duchess of the household of Winterfeld, she has to do her part even if the relationship is entirely contractual. She promises Mrs. Robin that she will try her best to fulfill her role as the mistress of the house, as well as protect herself. Yes, girl! Melissa returns to the Duke's office and with a newfound determination, asks the Duke to give her a teacher so she can learn the ropes around managing the household. The determination brings a smile to the Duke's face. He then proceeds to teach Melissa her first lesson, the waltz step. Oh, that should be easy, right? The day of the jewelry auction finally arrives. The party is being hosted on board a cruise ship and everyone is ecstatic, dressed in their fancy gowns and suits. Melissa, along with Lady Julie and Louis, are inside a private room preparing for the approaching announcement about their marriage. Before they go to the event, Louis guides Melissa to a private room where they'll meet one of their allies in their plan to exchange the crown of the royal family. Furthermore, the Duke reveals that there are 4 people who know of their contractual marriage, namely Mrs. Robin, the butler, Sir Kramatz, and the mage of the Winterfelds, Ian. Ian is a 36-year-old man that has the body of a boy, which stopped aging for some reason. Oh, reminds me of Merlin from 7 Deadly Sins. On the other side of the ship, a commotion is happening at the entrance of the ship due to a woman barging in and claiming that the blue diamond is her husband's legacy. Ian the mage explains that he was born a mage, and although magic is almost non-existent, people born with strong magic experience the anomaly of not aging. How we wish we don't age too! While the Duke, Lady Melissa, and Ian are conversing, they are interrupted by a servant who tells them that the Viscountess Iseult is asking to see them. Louis asks Melissa if she would like to accompany him and escorts her towards the commotion. The couple approaches Viscountess Iseult and asks what her business she has with them. The Viscountess replies with an explanation that the blue diamond was owned by her late husband. She further explains that she is willing to work herself tirelessly if it means that the jewel is returned to her. However, as much as the Duke wants to return the family gemstone, he states that he cannot because the person who auctioned the jewel was Viscountess Iseult's husband's younger brother. Yep, that's a tongue twister. The same younger brother who now inherits the title next, seeing as the late Viscount has no heirs. Despite this, the Duke still invites the Viscountess inside in order to know more about her concern. When they are settled in a private room, the Duke asks Viscountess Iseult about the blue diamond. Viscountess Iseult reveals the truth behind her husband's death. Because of his intense desire for the blue diamond, Lord Dorian, the Viscount's younger brother, was the one who killed her husband. She recounts that night where she vividly remembers Lord Dorian holding a suspicious bottle of pills and that he might have poisoned his own brother. That is indeed suspicious, all right. Melissa recalls it was an accidental fall, and Iseult admits it to be true that her husband fell down from riding a horse and broke his neck. She begins to tell them that the Viscount was a former polo player and he would not have fallen down for no good reason at all. The Duke insists that the doctor would have examined the body and told her the real reason, but Iseult was convinced that Lord Dorian paid the doctor to keep his mouth shut. She felt helpless, knowing she can't do anything about it due to the fact that her in-laws despise her because of her poor background. The Duke, in silence, is trying to understand her situation. He asks her to give him some time to think about the matter since the party is already starting. Melissa attempts to ask the Viscountess a question but is interrupted by her. The Viscountess, curious about Melissa, asks the Duke about her. The Duke introduces them to each other, and Iseult soon realizes that she is the well-known jeweler appraiser of Crescendo Jewelry. Melissa feels flattered that she knows of her. Iseult then asks Melissa what she's doing in the auction, and the Duke tells her that Melissa is the event host. The Viscountess looks astonished as she asks Melissa if the Duke employed her to host the auction. The Duke, standing beside Melissa, holds her hands and with confidence reveals that they are engaged. Iseult gazes at them with wistful eyes as she reminisced about her once married life. She reluctantly gives her good wishes to both of them. We also wish our couple a good happy marriage. They continue talking about the circumstances of the blue diamond. Iseult informs Louis and Melissa that someone wants to acquire it from Lord Dorian. More mystery is unfolding before our eyes, guys. He asked her husband for it, but he refused. The relationship between the brothers became even more strained. Melissa concludes that Dorian certainly had a motive to harm his brother. After the Viscountess leaves, the couple is left baffled about what their next move will be. By the time they are at the banquet, everyone is overly enthusiastic to speak with the Duke. They are the hosts of the event, so everyone is naturally paying attention to them. She notices how the people are gossiping about her, curious as to what her purpose is for being there. She's just the future wife of the most eligible bachelor out there. That's all. Being invited to the annual jewelry auction of the Winterfeld is a privilege in itself. It is the largest charity auction, and being there is proof of one's social standing. So being the partner of the Duke during an event like this is a big deal. When one attendee bravely asks Louis who she is, he announces that she is his partner for the day. People begin recognizing Melissa's work as the appraiser of Crescendo Jewelry. The nobles assume that the Duke is helping her get more clients and that she is there for business alone. Louis winks at her, and she recalls how he wanted to make their announcement more dramatic, so he asked her to be patient when it comes to the crowd's attention. These two certainly know how to make an effect. Amidst all the bustle, she catches sight of someone she distinctly recognizes. It's Lord Dorian. She observes him conversing with someone who is giving him sympathy for the loss of his brother. He is to be the Viscount soon, but he appears to be overly dejected about it. As someone who is a suspect in killing his own brother, he appears to be in deep mourning, and not at all as Iseult had described him. Melissa has to talk to her himself to get to the bottom of all this. Detective Tanya is back, people. She goes and introduces herself to him. He regards her while still wearing an expression of anguish. Even when she showed interest in the blue diamond, he merely tells her to cooperate with Winterfeld's appraiser since he is just the exhibitor. With the way he's acting, she speculates that he's not the killer. Then who could have done it then? She probes him, telling him that the owner's perspective is the most important. She even mentions how the blue diamond is called the brilliance of Iseult now. To her confusion, he reacts when she mentions his sister-in-law's name. He is trembling as he denies knowing anything about the change in name. He claims that he is merely selling it as his brother wanted. He hurriedly takes his leave after that. Melissa suddenly has an epiphany after thinking about all that he has said. She makes her way to Louis and asks him to confirm whether it is illegal to bid in advance during the Winterfeld's auction. The Duke tells her that it is indeed forbidden. She then voices out how it doesn't make sense for Lord Dorian to auction the diamond when Iseult insists that he is going to give it to a specific person. Auctioning it defeats the purpose. I am as confused as Melissa right now. What could Lord Dorian's true intentions be? Melissa figures that the only plausible reason as to why the diamond is being sold is to generate funds. The blue diamond has been surrounded by tragedy for a long time. It is only through Iseult's fame as a singer that its reputation has been covered up and is renamed the brilliance of Iseult. Melissa becomes increasingly worried about the conflict they are facing. Louis remarks that things will not end well if they are to consider just one side. Choosing between Iseult and Lord Dorian is not an option. He states that the only solution is to have the two talk to each other. She begins becoming visibly distressed, and Louis placed his hand on her shoulder to reassure her. Can I just say that he is so attentive? Where can we order this type of man? He continues to explain that ever since Viscount Dorian's business had failed, creditors had been pressuring the family to pay their debt. When the Viscount died, Isault was left to deal with everything, until an incident had happened. One of the creditors broke into the Dorian mansion and nearly assaulted Isault. The creditor was so angry that he resorted to violence. The lady was saved only because she fired a gun. It turns out, Isault was used to malicious fans following her around because of her singing days, so she has a habit of bringing a revolver with her. Famous people problem, really. All of a sudden, she begins frantically asking the confused-looking Duke where Isault is. Apparently, she distinctly remembers hearing a specific sound when Isault passed by her earlier. A certain clinking sound that could have been anything. However, hearing what she just heard now makes her realize that it was in fact a gun belt. Melissa is sure that Isault brought a gun with her. The sound she heard couldn't have been from pearls or brooches. Louis is confused as to why Madame Dorian would bring such a weapon to Winterfell's estate. Melissa believes that it is probably because she has lost her senses out of pure grief. Isault is from the entertainment industry, and that world is probably much worse than high society. Other than her skills as a singer, she would have to be bold enough to survive such a hostile environment. Why would such a level-headed woman be so aggravated that she would bring a gun? There is one thing that Melissa is sure of despite all of the confusion. Isault loved her husband so much and sees the diamond as a symbol of his love for her. This is a reason enough to value the jewelry more than her life. On the other hand, there's Lord Dorian. What did he mean that he was following what his brother wanted? What exactly did the late Viscount entrust to his brother? This is all so very confusing, and I can't blame Melissa for being in the same boat as us. Louis assumes that she has something in mind when she asks about their mage. He wants her to tell him if she needs anything and declares that the resources of Winterfell are at her disposal. OMG, such a charmer, isn't he? #swooning. She requests that he finds out the financial situation of the Dorians within an hour. He instantly calls Ryan to follow her order. He even calls her the future Duchess. How are you not melting right now, Melissa? Well, probably because the situation is so serious. My bad. We just can't help it. Isault has finally confronted Lord Dorian. He tries to deflect her attempt to talk to him, but she persisted, pushing the issue about the diamond once again. Lord Dorian is visibly exhausted with the topic at hand. He can't believe that she's still going on about the diamond. He can no longer take her argument about it, so he snaps at her. He exclaims how against he is about her marriage with his brother because he knew that it would turn out like this. He laments how both of them refuse to listen to anyone. His words anger her, and she outright accuses him of killing her husband. Lord Dorian is horrified to hear such a thing. Recalling all the happy memories he had with the late Viscount, how can he harm his own brother? He is furious as he exclaims that the blame is probably on her, for she is the reason he died in the first place. This is just becoming more intense. Isault, who clearly is not in the right state of mind due to all the anguish, pulls out her revolver. She points it at her brother-in-law, who is petrified to be face-to-face with the weapon. She doesn't understand why he would say that she caused her husband's demise. At that moment, Melissa arrives to stop her. The other people in the room at that point are beginning to gossip about how exciting the situation is. Honestly, some people are just shameless. To everyone's surprise, it is Melissa who declares that she is mistaken. She tells the distraught widower that it doesn't make sense that her husband has given her the jewel as a token of his love alone, when there are other heirlooms from the Dorian family that have been with them for generations, compared to the blue diamond that was just recently purchased. Melissa then reveals that Lord Dorian is putting the diamond into auction because he is executing her husband's will. Louis then implied that the Viscount had instructed his brother, Lord Dorian, that when he dies before the business is successful, his brother must get rid of the blue diamond and return Isault's investment to her. Isault is so devastated that she drops the gun. She demands that they show her proof. Just then, Ryan arrives carrying an envelope. It's the report on the Dorian family's finances. Viscount Dorian's failed investments have been the reason that their finances began struggling. The whole ordeal was not profiting fast enough, but he could not get out of the business because money had already been invested. Most of his funds had already been used up, so he was forced to loan money as well as use Isault's own wealth. She was totally okay about using her money for her husband's business, but the Viscount must have felt uneasy about it. Aw, what a good husband. Lord Dorian explains that his brother was also feeling threatened that their business competitors were out to get him. The day that Isaelt saw him going out of his brother's office carrying a bottle, his brother actually instructed him to retrieve an antidote since he no longer trusts their employees. Isaelt is devastated to hear all this. She doesn't understand why they didn't tell her anything. It turns out the Viscount just didn't want her to worry. Lord Dorian tells her that his brother wanted her money returned to her so she doesn't suffer financially now that he's gone. This is so painful. Poor couple. She is left in tears once the truth becomes clear. Her husband was merely looking out for her. She is forced onto her knees by the sheer intensity of her grief. Meanwhile, people around them are still using the whole situation as a source of entertainment, declaring how much more value is added to the blue diamond because of the tragedy. These people are like hyenas. Melissa is so offended by the people's behavior that she confronts a count whose comments are nothing but insensitive. She questions him sharply for saying words that can affect a mourning woman. The count merely dismisses her as a mere appraiser in a jewelry shop, and he steps forward to teach her a lesson. However, he accidentally kicked the revolver on the ground and it goes off. Louis is quick to embrace Melissa to protect her from the bullet. Good thing Ryan is there to slice the bullet in half. The Duke is clearly enraged by the Count's disrespect to her that he announces that Lady Melissa Tanya is in fact his fiancée. The arrogant Count had to apologize to her, otherwise he will have to duel the Duke. What a dramatic announcement! We love it! It is time for the wedding day. Melissa is looking gorgeous in her gown and accessories meant to show off her prestige. Our girl is slaying that look for sure. Julie even ends up tearing up by the emotional roller coaster that they are about to partake in. Seeing her mistress getting married just makes her so joyful. Us too, Julie. Melissa thinks about the events that have occurred so far. It has been a month since the auction. Lord Dorian has now inherited the title of Viscount, even though he is forced to sell the majority of his estate. However, by some miracle, the late Viscount merchant ships came back bearing great news. His business involving textiles was actually a success, and the competitor had completely withdrawn. I still can't help but despair about the late Viscount and Isaelt, though. The blue diamond, on the other hand, was bought by an anonymous fan of Isaelt. Out of the generosity of his heart, he gave the diamond back to Isaelt along with the auction money. More blessings to these types of people. Despite the tragedy that the jewel apparently brings, she was incredibly thankful for it. Her love for her husband is the most important to her. Out of everything, what Melissa has gained is probably the chance to witness magic up close. Ian is the Winterfeld family wizard. He will be a great help when it comes to consulting other gems in the future. They will really need it, especially since she is certain that the Crown Prince is involved in all the events that have happened. She refuses to let others interfere with her career any longer. You go, girl. Show that Crown Prince who's boss. When she meets Louis before they are to start the wedding, he looks at her like he was stunned. He then flashes a dashing smile and calls her stunning. Then the guests begin pouring in. The two hold each other's hands as they make their way to their wedding. The beautiful couple are now walking down the aisle. Since Melissa doesn't have any father figure to walk her, they deviate from the tradition and end up walking together. Even though everything is contractual, she still can't help but feel wedding jitters. He notices how her hands are trembling, so he gently takes one of them to reassure her. My gosh, the way he's looking at her! Swoon-worthy. If you ever change your mind, Miss Melissa, we will gladly take your place. Just a suggestion. Everyone is rejoicing in their union, and the enthusiastic clapping is heard all around them. The priest pronounced them as husband and wife and declared that they may kiss. Melissa starts becoming nervous. Like the gentleman that he is, he cups her face and tells her to relax. He then slowly leans in to give her a kiss, sealing their marriage. I am hyperventilating so badly, and I'm not even the bride. Imagine what she feels. By the end of the ceremony, Melissa is finally a duchess, and Duke Winterfeld is now her husband. So lucky. When everything is done, Melissa is preparing for bed as she listens to Julie gush about the wonderful wedding. She recalls how happy she was to see some of the guests, while others, not so much. What surprised her the most, even the Duke himself, was the arrival of the Emperor himself. His Majesty treats the Duke like his own son, but it was still a shock when he personally attended his wedding. Julie informs her that the Marchioness Calade, the Duke's great-aunt, is coming to visit. Even though they won't be family for long, Melissa still wants to get along with her since she was the one that took in Louis after the loss of his mother. She then asks what other important matters they are to attend to that evening. Her innocent questions make the maids giggle. Apparently, the last order of business is her wedding night. How can you forget the main event of every wedding, Melissa? Like, that's what I'm looking forward to. The wedding night was not what we expected, unfortunately. Deep into the night, Melissa is merely gazing at the sleeping form of her husband. Why is he still so gorgeous when he's asleep? Did I mention that he is shirtless? Okay, heart, calm down. Earlier that night, she declares that she'll take the couch. Louis refuses to let her sleep there and wants her to take the bed. She protests, saying that she can't allow him to be uncomfortable. When they are unable to come to an agreement, the Duke suddenly lifts her in his arms and carries her to bed. OMG, slow down, sir. However, we are disappointed once again, for he merely intends for them to share the bed. He even assures her that he will not lay a finger on her, even offering a dagger for her to put on her pillow. Sir, why not though? We'd love that, you know. Suddenly, he leans towards her and whispers in her ear that she ought not to touch him either. Melissa blushes about what he's implying, and she smacks him for it. Love a little husband and wife banter. Fortunately for us, he does sleep half naked. I mean, let's continue the story. Now that they're lying in the same bed, she can't help but notice how gorgeous he is in his sleep. That face can give anyone a heart attack. The next morning, Melissa overslept. It's a good thing she arrives before the Marchioness. When they finally begin their talk, the Marchioness instantly expresses how she doesn't approve of her as a whole. Ouch! Another disapproving mother figure trope? Things just got even more complicated. The Marchioness mentions how she is long past marriageable age compared to her grandnephew, and how her family lacks influence. Before Melissa can say something properly, she interrupts her by saying that she has more confidence in the Duke's decision. However, she has something to ask Melissa. She wants her to close her jewelry boutique permanently. Oh no! She insists that since she is now the Duchess of Winterfeld, she has far greater responsibilities. Melissa is left speechless by the onslaught of demands that was just made. She can't tell her a direct answer because the only reason she's even married to the Duke is because of the boutique. To her surprise, however, the Marchioness challenges her that if she wishes to keep her business, she must show that she is capable of doing both her duties as a business owner and as a duchess. After that, she gives Melissa a box that she wishes to give to her as a wedding present. The box contains a pair of beautiful earrings. Later on, Melissa is left desperately trying to come up with a way to deal with all of this. Even though the marriage is fake, she doesn't want everything to be all for show. A good challenge that I can confidently say that our MC can take, right guys? Melissa seeks the approval of Marchioness Calade, and a butler presents her with something intriguing. He guides her to a meticulously preserved room once belonging to the former Duchess, the Marchioness's younger sister. Among the items is a ring setting bereft of its gem. This ring was a gift from Calade to her sister, symbolizing marital bliss before the sister's marriage into the Winterfeld family. Tragically, her sister died 3 years later during childbirth, and Calade's distant estate prevented her attendance at the funeral. Only her sister's infant daughter remained. Calade channeled her affection toward her niece, treating her like a daughter. Yet, history echoes as the niece announces her marriage to the fifth prince, surrendering her title. Calade witnesses her niece's enamored fall and eventual poisoning. Amid the turmoil of uncovering the culprit, the ring's gem disappears. Since that time, efforts to restore the ring's former beauty persisted. Calade tirelessly sought a pink pearl to replace the lost one. Poor Marchioness. Meeting the Marchioness once more, Melissa presents a jewelry box unveiling House Calade's meticulously restored family heirloom. The Marchioness is rendered speechless by disbelief and astonishment at the sight of the ring she once gifted to her sibling. Amid rigorous research, Melissa learns that the sought-after pink pearl must possess a distinctive luminescence, rendering it exceedingly rare. Cataloging Winterfeld's jewelry collection in the library, she solidifies her knowledge. Confirming her findings, she approaches Louis to secure a carriage for her boutique, accompanied by Julie. During the journey, her aide inquires whether the Marchioness will truly accept her if she succeeds in restoring the ring. Melissa elaborates that the ring signifies not only an heirloom, but also profound affection for her younger sister. Fortunately for our new Duchess, the elusive pink pearl is already in her possession, stemming from a previously canceled pearl order. Lucky girl she truly is. The Marchioness cannot believe her eyes. The ring in front of her is the exact replica of the one she has lost. Melissa explained to the perplexed woman that she merely found the same type of pearl. The reason the Marchioness failed to find a luminescent pink pearl is that unlike the pearls in the South that are obtained from oysters, pink pearls are conch pearls, ones that are found only in the Kingdom of Asim. Melissa adds that this type of pearl is already quite rare in the Kingdom of Asim, so it's no wonder that it became even more rare in their country due to the conflict between Annabelle and Asim. It was only through sheer luck that Melissa came across such a rare treasure, all thanks to one of her business deals. Now that she thinks about it, the pearl may have been smuggled in. Yikes! Marchioness Calade is still astonished in her seat. Melissa then takes this opportunity to clarify something. She understands that her status as a low-ranked woman makes her seem unworthy of the Duke, but she has always fought fiercely and earnestly to survive, thus she will now succumb to any conspiracy or plot that comes her way. Hearing the strength in her voice, the woman somehow sees her late sibling in Melissa. She declares that Louis indeed found a worthy partner. Later on, the couple watches the Marchioness leave. Louis then thanks her for treating his great-aunt with kindness. But then, to Melissa's astonishment, Louis informs her that they have received countless invitations. Most notable of all is the one from the palace. Now that Winterfield finally has a duchess, it is expected that people will want to associate with them even more. But before she can take part in any social gathering, she must first meet with the emperor. Melissa then realizes what Louis is implying. A debutante ball will be held for her at this age. It is necessary to declare her as a true member of high society and be introduced as a member of the royal family. To make matters worse, the ball is in 3 days. She now has to deal with endless dress fittings and etiquette lessons. She needs all the help she can get to face those noble vultures. On the day of the ball, Melissa is nothing if not perfect. From head to toe, she is the image of nobility. As she walks hands in hand with Louis, she can't help but think about how worried she is for the Duke. Earlier, while the maid was brushing her hair, Louis entered, took the hairbrush, and did it himself. Gosh, how domestically romantic is that? Melissa expresses her concern for him, stating that so much has happened since he lived in the royal palace. She doesn't blame him at all if he is harboring resentment toward the royal family. Rather than answering her concern, the Duke simply hands her a ring, the same pink pearl ring that his great-aunt values so much. He tells her that the Marchioness wanted her to wear it for the ball. He then leans closer, thanking her for worrying for him. But he assures her that anyone who wants to claim the throne needs to be ruthless. Hearing his cryptic words, Melissa can't help but suspect that Louis plans to take the throne for himself. The Duke then clarifies that he has no such desire, but he does have a direct claim to the throne. After all, when the current emperor asked the late Duke of Winterfield to give up his claim, he did not include the next generation in the agreement. This is intentional. He wanted his own son to have a competition. After all, the greatest threat to your own rule is an intemperate heir. The Crown Prince Roland sees Louis as a threat to his claim. He will do anything to sabotage him. Louis even had the matter about the Dorians investigated, and he now knows that Roland has had a hand in all of that. Louis now sees that the prince may have been the master behind all the counterfeit jewelry appearing in the kingdom. But to what end? The Duke speculates that the prince can only have 2 goals. One is probably to threaten the Winterfield jewelry business, and the other is that he is using all these famous gems as a test since he actually plans to counterfeit something far more precious. Louis even thinks that Roland may fear the Wizard of Winterfield. The Duke even has some magical power through Miegr, which may be the reason why the Emperor insisted that he be raised in the royal palace. Soon enough, the couple enters the hall of the palace to greet the Emperor. The Emperor enthusiastically receives them, expressing his disbelief that Louis of all people has married for love. The Emperor then happily tells them that their wedding gift will soon be sent to their estate. Later on, Louis left Melissa to her own devices to handle some business. The Duchess is resting her pounding heart when she comes face to face with someone unexpected. It's the Crown Prince wanting to talk to her. Melissa bows in front of the prince as customary, but she's trying to gather strength, telling herself that she is now the Duchess of Winterfield, and not even the Crown Prince can insult her. But can I just say, this Crown Prince is kinda handsome. Evil vibes certainly suit him. Anyway, Melissa graciously answers the prince, telling him that she will gladly oblige. The prince then directs her to walk in the garden. He then has her settled on a bench before confronting her. Without further ado, he asks her about the terms of her contract with Louis. OMG, this guy is perceptive! He finds it inconceivable that someone as sly as Louis Winterfield will ever marry for love. He speculates that she has something valuable to offer to him. Putting on a brave face, Melissa answers that if they assume that she and the Duke are indeed not a love match but a political conspiracy, then how can someone who claims to know Louis so much even think that he will easily trust her? The prince then draws back, apologizing for offending her. But he insists that Louis has a way of drawing people to him, just as he did Ryan Crimhart's and the Winterfield Wizard. He wants to know if the Duchess is neither a wizard nor an alchemist. He just can't fathom why the Duke will marry such a woman otherwise. To ease his suspicions, Melissa clarifies that she is neither of those things, but she counters the prince's accusations by stating that the prince seems to fear Louis. Based on the look on his face, that certainly hit a nerve. Melissa then declares that since he has already conducted investigations about her, he is simply speaking to her to confirm his preconceived notions of her. She now suggests that he take another guess as to why she's so loyal to Louis. Roland can't believe what she's saying. How can the two of them actually marry for love? He insists that she is not someone who believes in fairy tales such as love or romance. He insists that he has met tons of people, and he knows that every relationship is a give and take. He believes that Louis may have offered the Duchess something greater than her career as a shop owner. At that moment, Melissa realizes that the prince, despite all the troubles he has caused, is simply immature. She tells him that the reason why he thinks that way is because everyone has treated him in the same way, always wanting compensation from him. Melissa then says that she feels sorry for him and she has nothing more to discuss with him. She then leaves once her lady-in-waiting calls for her attention. The prince is left dumbfounded. He can't grasp the concept of someone's loyalty without asking for anything in return. After all, he has always lived that way. Even his mother, who was a maid, treated him in the same way. Soon enough, the Duke and Duchess find each other. Melissa asks him if everything has been taken care of, and he answers that he simply talked with some nobles due to his long absence at court. Louis then asks in turn if something happened in his absence. Melissa decides against telling him about her encounter with the prince. Instead, she says that she has come to realize that even those with noble blood are just as human as the rest of us. The Duke dispels her faraway thoughts by poking her cheeks and telling her that her words can get her executed for treason. Just as Melissa begins panicking, he tells her he's merely joking, assuring her that she's already part of the royal family. He then asks her how she feels about the palace. She tells him that at first, she was intimidated by all its grandeur, but now that she's there, she realizes that it's nothing special. The Duke replies that the palace has this effect on people. He even states that the place eventually feels wearying after some time. Melissa, seeing his melancholy expression, asks if something has upset him. The Duke suddenly smiles brightly, saying that it is kind of heartwarming that they're concerned for each other. Seriously, his smile is like a ray of sunshine. But he assures her that all he did was talk with other nobles, otherwise known as networking. It's part of being a royal heir. But then there's the Crown Prince. The Emperor treats him so badly that the nobles feel like they should keep their guard around him. I honestly feel sorry for him. Soon, the couple are on their way to do their final task in the palace, meeting with the priest. There, Melissa learns that the blessing they're about to receive has a function. Turns out, one of the holy relics kept in the temple is an object of powerful magic. The Duke explains that the relic is one of the few vessels of magic still in existence. It keeps those who are blessed with it from danger. The relic is usually used for coming-of-age ceremonies or for special occasions such as weddings. Louis tells her that once she sees the holy relic, she will find it fascinating, especially since it has glorious precious stones. But then their chit-chat is cut short when one of the priests hurriedly approaches them, telling them in panic that the statue is not working. Oh no, what now? They quickly enter the location of the statue, and Melissa comes face to face with the magnificence of the holy statue. The Duke interrogates the priest, asking them when was the last time the statue was used. They explain that it was over 4 months ago, and the statue worked just fine back then. Fortunately, there have been records of those who visited the statue since. When Melissa asks about what's happening, Louis explains that despite not seeing anything amiss about the statue, he can't feel even a small amount of magic coming from it. It is very rare for a precious stone to suddenly lose the magic it was housing just like that. So he speculates that either someone tampered with the core of the holy statue or it's a counterfeit. However, Melissa argued that no one could have possibly switched out the statue since it's secured to the floor. The Duke agrees, but he explains that maybe the culprit only took a single stone, the stone that functioned as the core of the relic. Melissa then realizes that he already has a suspect in mind, and we all know who it can be. Louis then asks for help in this extraordinary circumstance. Determined, Melissa assures him that no matter how long it'll take, she'll do what she can. Suddenly, the crown prince arrives, asking why the couple is still in the temple. The priest then says that he's the one who informed the emperor, so Roland explains that he came on behalf of the emperor who is currently occupied with other engagements. The prince states that this matter is a matter of grave importance, but it is royal business. He then questions once again why the Winterfelds are still there. Louis smoothly replies that he is still of royal blood and that he can't help but feel like this incident is a conspiracy against his house, since it coincidentally happened around the time of his marriage. A stiff silence befalls the rival royals, and Melissa notes that if only the emperor strongly supports the crown prince, then the priest would be utterly obedient to him. However, Louis is His Majesty's beloved nephew, blessed with magic and second in line to the throne. Unlike Roland, who is the son of a common maid, Louis is the only heir born of wedlock between royalty and a respected aristocrat. That alone makes Louis a better candidate in the eyes of the more traditional nobles. Poor Roland. I mean, he is an arrogant guy, but no one deserves to be judged just because of his birth. The crown prince has no choice but to ask the duke what he wants, and Louis simply asks that he be informed if there is something wrong with the holy relic. Obviously, swallowing his anger, the prince orders one of the priests to bring the guest book and make a list of the most recent visitors to the temple and the statue. But then the crown prince points out that soon the place will be crawling with knights, and he doesn't think that it is an appropriate place for his wife. Unexpectedly, the Duke wraps his arm around Melissa's shoulders and answers that Melissa can stay where she will at her discretion, for he cannot order her in any way. The prince finds it ridiculous that the Duke will allow his wife to participate in the investigation as well. Louis then reminds him of his wife's skill as the best gemologist in the capital. The crown prince is ready to argue back, but Louis has already diverted his attention, choosing instead to ask the Duchess what she wants to do. Rather than answer, she orders her servant to get her tools from the carriage before declaring that she wants to be part of the investigation. Melissa begins her work sometime later, but then the persistent crown prince approaches her. He states that noble-born ladies should not involve themselves in something like this. He finds it inappropriate for someone of her standing to be helping in the investigation, especially since she'll be soon attending the royal ball at the palace, thus becoming an official member of high society. He wonders if she even cares that others will see her as uncultured because of her behavior. Melissa, not backing down at all, replies that the only nobles currently in the temple that she'll encounter at the ball are her husband and the prince himself. She questions whether the prince is saying all of this because he already finds her uncultured. The prince is shocked to hear this from her, saying that she doesn't seem to know how to frame her words properly. The Duchess admits that even though she was born of noble blood, she has never been part of high society to learn how to mince her words. Internally, Melissa wonders why the prince isn't as intimidating as he was before. Melissa then continues, asking him if all his questions stems from the fact that he finds her disagreeable. This aggravates the prince even more, insisting that he's saying all of this because of what she's doing is dangerous. He thinks that the people who replace the stone in the statue may have some evil intent, and she may become their target. Am I sensing some concern over here, Crown Prince? What are you on to? Melissa argues that even if they hire another gemologist, he or she will still face the same danger he perceives she will fall under. And even if it's true that someone would harm her, no one is stupid enough to make a move against her inside a temple filled with knights. And so she concludes that the prince is not merely talking about the investigation, but about how he dislikes her in general. She assumes that he simply wants to banish her out of his sight. The prince froze in front of her, utterly speechless with a peculiar expression on his face. Melissa is quite shocked to see it on him, stopping her tirade. That look is familiar. Roland, are you perhaps catching feelings for a married woman? When one of the priests calls for his attention, the prince quickly excuses himself. Melissa is left dumbfounded, trying to make sense of the strange encounter. Melissa decides to focus on the matter at hand. She has to figure out which of the precious stones is the core of the holy relic. She then turns to the high priest, asking if she can borrow their sacred list of temple treasures to use for the investigation. The nervous priest is unsure for a while, but he eventually gives in when Melissa swears by the name of Winterfield that she'll return the book intact. At their home, Melissa is determined enough to bring her work there as well. The Duke watches her flip through the pages of the book, noting how admirable her dedication is. Melissa tells him that she wants to prove the Crown Prince wrong. Louis guesses that Roland has aggravated her somehow, but Melissa refuses to go into the details. Instead, she asks him about his request to see the guest list of the temple. But before he can delve into the details, he looks around in a rare sign of paranoia and asks her for a walk outside. As they do so, Louis is quick to dismiss their guards, stating that they want to have some time for themselves. That is when he asks Melissa if she has any suspicions about the culprit. She reveals that she suspects that the Crown Prince has something to do with the whole thing. Louis completely agrees with her, but he knows that Roland does not have the power to recognize the core to extract it himself, so he may have had some help. It can't be anyone from his aristocratic circle, but someone with a commoner background. However, not everyone can enter the high temple of the palace with someone high-ranking vouching for them. For a commoner to enter, royalty should be backing you up. Louis then asks her about the progress of her work, and she answers that something of this scale will take days to complete, even at a large workshop with several gemologists. To her surprise, the Duke leans in close to her to fix her shawl, promising to cheer her on. As they gaze into each other's eyes, Melissa's heart can't stop fluttering. Same here. He then leans back to tell her that they should get back in. Once Melissa is safely settled on a horse, Louis's entire demeanor changes. He calls for Ryan and Ian, who quickly appear out of nowhere. He orders them to strengthen the watch on their manor, since they have to keep their wits about them for a while. The coming days sure will be bumpy. On a bitter day, the Crown Prince burns with anger as he remembers how Louis fooled all of high society. Fear gnaws at him as he imagines the truth coming out, that he is the one who stole the holy relic. His mind swirls with blame, even turning against his father. He feels trapped and powerless, knowing the Palace of Wizards will never openly back him. His thoughts shift to the failed alliance with the Assemian kingdom, where he spent a fortune that brought him nothing in return. As if that weren't enough, he recalls the so-called wizard he sought out, only to find the man was a fraud who knew nothing but how to fake precious stones. The memory fills him with bitterness. Serves him right! Realizing he must act quickly to protect his secret, the Crown Prince calls his servant and gives a firm order for him to go to Winterfield Manor and get the book from Melissa. The command is simple but sharp. Take the book by any means, but do not harm the Duchess. Meanwhile, at Winterfield Manor, Melissa is lost in her work, studying the stones with the book as her guide. Her focus is intense. She's determined to get to the bottom of this mystery. Hours pass before she realizes it's getting late and Louis still hasn't returned. Her mind drifts back to their walk the day before. She remembers Louis giving orders to Ryan and Ian and asking about it until their talk centered on Ian's magical talent. Louis had joked about a legendary wizard who could move mountains, teasing Melissa that Ian might pull off something similar, like moving a hill. With a sly smile, he'd hinted that she might soon see Ian's magic for herself. Now, under the cover of night, Winterfield Manor falls silent as the Crown Prince's servant slips inside, ready to carry out his master's dark plan. Let's wait and see if he can ever execute his wicked plan. As Melissa stands face to face with the Crown Prince's servants, dread washes over her. She refuses to accept that she might lose the book she has pledged her name to. She knows she must act to protect herself and the precious book. The intruder, one of the Crown Prince's servants, quickly realizes that Melissa is anything but ordinary. She isn't the type of noblewoman who would cower in fear. She stands her ground, ready to fight back. In her mind, Melissa knows what she must do. Running a boutique as a single woman has made her familiar with encounters involving petty thieves. It doesn't mean she's fearless, she's just determined to face her fears. With resolve, she spins around and screams for help, calling out for Ryan and Ian, the Winterfield wizard. The intruder feels a chill of fear as they realize what's coming. Just moments later, Ryan and Ian burst into the scene, radiating authority and ready to protect the Duchess and defend the manor. In an instant, Ian's magic wraps around the intruders, trapping them and leaving them powerless to escape. As Ian rushes to Melissa's side, she notices he is transformed. He's taller and larger, and more breathtaking. Ian then explains that that is his true form, while the Ian that Melissa usually sees, the smaller version, is a compact body that requires less energy to move around. He also explains to Melissa that they use magic to keep her safe. Intrigued by the word magic, Melissa leans in, captivated by this new revelation. Ian has no choice but to demonstrate his magic, leaving her completely astounded. As Ian explains and demonstrates how a protection spell shields Melissa from the intruders, he suddenly realizes its loophole. The intruders weren't planning to harm Melissa, which is why he wasn't alerted immediately. He apologizes, but Melissa quickly brushes it off, stating they arrived just in time. Ryan joins the conversation, announcing that all the intruders have left the premises. He suggests that it's wise to let them go and follow them to uncover who ordered the intrusion at the Winterfield Manor. As Melissa watches Ryan and Ian, she admires their close bond, appreciating their brotherhood. They check on her, asking if she's hurt, and she assures them she's perfectly fine, thanks to both of them. Reality sets in as they notice the tattered book lying nearby. The ripped pages likely contain clues about the theft. Melissa, who vowed to never damage the precious book, feels it's only right to apologize to the high priest and offer to reimburse them. As their conversation winds down, Ryan prepares to make rounds around the manor with his knights, while Ian sets up magical protection for the entire night. This makes Melissa feel safe and cared for. Well done, Ryan and Ian! But the night doesn't end there. Melissa dedicates the evening to studying the book and the stones that might reveal the core of the holy relic. Such a dedicated queen! The next day, she successfully identifies the core of the holy relic and excitedly shares her findings with Louis, who has just returned home. Her eyes sparkle as she recounts her significant discovery, putting Louis at ease and alleviating his worries about her well-being after the previous night's incident. Melissa explains how her expertise with stones leads her to the conclusion about which stone is the core of the holy relic. Melissa reveals to Louis that the core of the holy relic is yellow quartz. They believe it was swapped for something similar, nearly impossible to differentiate, especially for an untrained eye. This revelation leads them to a troubling conclusion. The thief is an expert. According to Melissa, yellow quartz is synonymous with cat's eye quartz, known for its distinctive cat's eyes effect, and prized as the most valuable of all quartz stones. However, the book contradicts this. It states that the core of the holy relic is a chrysoberyl. Melissa is convinced it is yellow quartz. While the stones may look alike, they are made of entirely different materials, leaving them both puzzled and curious. Louis shares his thoughts on the Crown Prince Roland's ability to commit such a heinous act. He recalls several similar incidents involving stolen jewelry, leading them to suspect that these were all Roland's attempts to test the jeweler's skills. This is when Melissa realizes why Louis wanted them to bring the guest book. Now, they can look into the names listed, which, when narrowed down, point toward a 16-year-old girl wizard. However, Louis hesitates to condemn a young girl without knowing her story, especially considering the Crown Prince might be using her as a pawn. In the midst of all of this, Louis reflects on how much of a blessing Melissa is in his life. Oh, what a heartwarming scene! Later that afternoon, Louis gazes intently at a woman's portrait. Ryan notices the Duke's distraction and approaches him. When Ryan asks about the painting, Louis appears conflicted but quickly shifts the conversation to a different topic. Ryan can't help but wonder about the difficult position the Duke is in, given his reluctance to inherit the throne. Meanwhile, Melissa visits the library, eager to uncover her next discovery. What secrets might she unravel this time? As Melissa steps into the library, the attendant greets her with enthusiasm. She asks about Melissa's purpose for visiting, and Melissa hands over the tattered book, hoping it can be mended. The attendant smiles reassuringly and explains that it can still be fixed, but she needs some time. Melissa nods gratefully, relieved to hear the news. As Melissa expresses her gratitude, the attendant replies that it's the least they can do for the Duke, especially considering how much he has helped them. She then shares a heartfelt story about the Duke's kindness, recounting how he saved Ryan, Ian, and her from their troubled past, giving them a chance to live better lives. From that moment on, the three of them vow their loyalty to the Duke. A trio with golden hearts. This is a trope everyone can appreciate. The attendant then mentions the upcoming spring festival in just 2 days, but what she says next surprises Melissa. She asks if Melissa knows who the Crown Prince hates the most. Melissa thinks it must be Louis, but the attendant shakes her head. While the Crown Prince isn't fond of the Duke, his greatest hatred is reserved for the Queen, as he's not her real son. Wrapping up their conversation, the attendant suggests that the Queen is probably expecting to see Melissa at the ball. Melissa is left speechless by the news. As night falls, Melissa collapses onto her bed, worn out from the day's complexities. Her mind drifts back to a moment earlier when Louis spoke to her, sharing something that made her heart flutter. He told her about an exhibit the Crown Prince was preparing. At first, he feared the Crown Prince would reveal their secret through this exhibit, but after Melissa's insight, Louis seems to reconsider. He suspects the Crown Prince might be planning to swap all the cornerstone stones under the guise of the exhibit. As he talks, Melissa can't help but notice the flicker of anger in his eyes. Melissa softly calls Louis' name, making him pause as she cups his face in her hands. There's really something powerful about a girl making the first move. Louis then stares at her, taken aback, and attempts to lighten the mood with a joke. Their conversation then drifts toward whether the Crown Prince will bring the young girl to the banquet. Back in the present, Melissa finds herself lost in thoughts about her talk with Louis, wondering what he stands to gain from everything unfolding around them. The weight of it all gives her a headache, so she finally succumbs to sleep. It truly is a complicated life. As Melissa drifts into sleep, Louis quietly enters the room and goes straight to her side. He notices something isn't quite right. Her face seems a bit troubled. Gently, he lifts her and settles her comfortably, his care unmistakable. What a thoughtful man you are, Duke. He lies beside Melissa, gazing at her peaceful sleeping face. But a shadow of regret clouds his thoughts. He wishes she hadn't seen that moment of anger slip through him, leaving him feeling uneasy. His mind circles back to the incident that nearly put her in harm's way. Although he anticipated it, the thought of Melissa's close call weighs heavily on him. Softly, he kisses her forehead and wraps his arms around her, feeling the warmth of their heartbeats align. Can this be any more romantic? Have some consideration for us singles, will you? 3 days later, in the royal palace, Melissa enters with such grace that heads turn in admiration. She sighs, remembering the moment before the spring ball. Louis had gifted her a stunning gown, crafted from the rarest silk and adorned with real gold. A dress more magnificent than she could have imagined. He spoils her to the point that she wonders if her dress might even outshine the queen's. Returning her focus to the ball's purpose, Melissa scans the room, searching for a particular young girl. She is soon greeted by a friend, accompanied by someone from the distant land of Asim. The woman introduces herself as Verette Lamuna, and Melissa's eyes are drawn to the striking stone in Verette's ring. It's exquisite. Verette reveals it's made from the legendary desert sunstone, but before she can say more, Verette catches sight of a breathtaking scene. Duke Louis alongside the queen gracing the hall. What a sight to behold! Everyone's gaze is locked on the queen and Duke Louis. Madame Lamuna can't help but admire Louis, even complimenting Melissa for having such a remarkable husband. Melissa smiles and asks Verette if anyone has joined her tonight. With a teasing smirk, Verette replies that she's stuck with her ancient pumpkin of a husband. Then, turning back to Melissa, she remarks that Melissa must feel like she has the world at her feet with Louis by her side. Her thoughts drift briefly to a rejuvenation potion she might give her own husband. She asks Melissa about it, who suggests that perhaps Isolde would know of such a thing. But when they turn to Isolde, she's completely entranced, eyes fixed on the queen and the duke. Verette teases her for staring at Melissa's husband so intently, but Isolde is quick to brush it off. As Melissa watches, she notices Madame Lamuna's fascination with Louis, much like most of the women in the room, despite knowing he's married. Some people need to learn about respecting boundaries. She glances at Isolde and realizes her gaze isn't on Louis, but on the queen. And suddenly it clicks. The ring on Verette's hand. It matches the queen's. Oh no! Just then, the queen and Louis notice Melissa and begin walking toward her. Panic rises within her. She can't let the queen and Verette learn the truth about the identical stones on their rings. One of them might feel dishonored. As the queen approaches, Melissa bows respectfully while the queen greets her warmly, expressing her pleasure at finally meeting her, and she replies with so much appreciation and admiration towards the queen. Melissa knows she must keep the two women from interacting. She sends a silent plea for help to Louis, but to no avail. Amid the tension, Melissa catches herself admiring her husband's beauty, his perfect smile lighting up the room. I don't blame you, Melissa. I'd admire him too. Ugh. Later that evening, Louis and Ryan are seen talking in a quiet corner. Ryan has updates from his investigation, but wants to talk to Louis not just as a knight, but as a friend. Man to man. Ryan asks why Louis has seemed so troubled since marrying Melissa. He probes into Louis's true feelings, but Louis replies that his feelings don't matter. Melissa will eventually return to her old life. Yet Ryan feels strongly about the two of them. encouraging Louis to make a move, to try to make her fall in love with him and make her stay. Another day, another reason to love Ryan. Louis gazes lovingly at Melissa as he asks the queen for her thoughts on her. The queen says Melissa is both intelligent and as gracious as any noblewoman, making Louis smile proudly. She also notices how carefully Louis has attended to every detail of Melissa's attire, his devotion clear in his admiring looks. Meanwhile, Melissa is plotting ways to keep the queen from noticing the stone on Verette's ring. The only distraction she can think of is her own extravagant gown, so she steps closer to the queen, hoping it will capture her attention. Across the room, Verette watches the queen admiringly. Her gaze is so intense that Isolde gently scolds her, warning that such staring might seem rude. Realizing she's not in her homeland of a sim, Verette quickly adjusts her gaze. As Melissa and the queen chat, the queen notices Melissa's two friends, leaving them no choice but to introduce themselves. The queen and Verette soon fall into a discussion on strengthening relations between their kingdoms, especially in trade and commerce. Louis leans towards Melissa, whispering that everything seems to be going well, but she only gives him a sharp look and taps his foot with her heel, leaving him puzzled about what he's done wrong. The conversation suddenly halts when a formal announcement rings out. The king and crown prince have arrived. The queen's expression turns cold at the mention, and she excuses herself from the group. Taking the chance, Melissa pulls Louis aside to talk privately, finally revealing her dilemma. But as they speak, they hear faint footsteps and catch glimpses of shadows. It's the young girl the crown prince recently took as his vassal. They decide to follow her, but Louis has a different plan. He sweeps Melissa up in his arms, carrying her bridal style, teasing that her heels might give them away. His way of ensuring she stays in their marriage. How adorable is that? The girl slips into what appears to be a hidden room. On a table inside lies a suspicious-looking drink, catching Louis and Melissa's attention. Could it be poison? Oh no. As Louis and Melissa peer into the dimly lit secret room, Louis knows this is their moment to settle things once and for all. With a firm resolve, Louis steps forward, revealing himself to the young girl, with Melissa following close behind. The girl gasps in fear, her eyes filling with tears as she begins to tremble, certain she's about to face punishment for her actions. Gently, Melissa urges her to tell the truth, her kindness breaking through the girl's fear. Finally, the young girl confesses. She's the one who forged the counterfeit ring now worn by the queen. When Melissa asks why, the girl shares her story. One of survival in a world where both her parents are gone, leaving her alone. To survive, she turned to her unique skills, eventually crossing paths with Roland, who has since manipulated her abilities for his own ends. Melissa's gaze shifts to the mysterious vial, asking about its purpose. The young girl admits it's hers, a sleeping potion she planned to use on either the queen or Verette so she could secretly take one of their rings. Melissa sighs, her heart heavy with the growing complexity of the situation. As Louis and Melissa exchange glances, they realize they can't simply release the girl. She could be a key witness in the relic case. Louis agrees, but knows they must proceed carefully. He advises the girl to lay low for a few days, promising to send her a secret message soon. He tells her she mustn't keep following Roland's orders blindly. The girl can only nod, her expression caught between fear and relief. Once alone in the room, Louis notices Melissa's troubled expression. Trying to lighten the mood, he teases her, saying he thought she was staring at him earlier for a different reason. He had to put so much effort into his appearance, even matching his tie to her dress just to impress her. But Melissa, unable to ignore Louis's recent odd behavior, brings it up. Louis admits he feels responsible for the intruder incident that nearly endangered her. However, as he speaks, a blush creeps over his face, revealing more than just concern. Melissa, ever observant, can't resist asking what's really on his mind. Could the Duke be hiding deeper feelings? As Melissa prepares to ask the Duke a pivotal question, a wave of doubt suddenly sweeps over her. She worries that being with such a remarkable man might prevent him from finding a better match. Oh, Melissa, don't think that. If only you knew. When Louis notices her hesitation and gently prompts her about the question, she offers a soft smile and says they should return to the ball. Wouldn't it look odd if the guest of honor wasn't there? Louis smiles faintly, nodding, and together they re-enter the ballroom, hands intertwined. But the moment they step inside, a chill of dread hits them when Isolde hurries over, whispering that rumors are spreading. People have noticed that the Queen and Verette are wearing identical rings. Scanning the room, Melissa spots Verette, who is proudly showing off her ring to a small crowd, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her. She's basking in the admiration, completely oblivious to the potential chaos her boasting could unleash on the two kingdoms. Melissa's heart races with worry that the crown prince might catch wind of this, complicating the delicate case of the holy relic even further. Worse, an innocent might be accused of this scandal. As if to escalate things, Madame Lamuna, seemingly unaware of the tension, approaches the queen, raises her hand, and gleefully announces that they have matching rings. From across the room, Melissa stands frozen, utterly baffled by Madame Lamuna's bold and almost offensive gesture towards the queen. Trouble looms in the air. What could be the consequences of such a reckless act? Melissa feels a surge of tension as she watches Madame Lamuna's deliberate wink and graceful stride toward the queen. Confusion grips her as the queen gets puzzled by Madame Lamuna's mention of her ring being referred to as the desert sun as well. The two jewels glint under the light, eerily identical in color and radiance. As whispers ripple through the crowd, they speculate that a jewel identical to the queen's, worn by a merchant from Asim, could mean one is counterfeit. Oh no, I bet everyone is at the edge of their seats. Melissa's heart sinks at the thought that the crown's reputation could be at stake. She feels trapped between her roles as a duchess and a gemologist, wondering how to salvage the situation when Madame Lamuna steps in, playfully complimenting the queen's ring as the real desert sun. She explains that her homeland, Asim, historically produced these gems, but the original disappeared long ago. Now she claims the title merely refers to any ruby of exceptional quality, a notion that she implies must have changed while Annabelle and Asim lost contact. The queen finds this an intriguing coincidence and the crowd relaxes, comforted by Lamuna's words and believing the queen's gem is safely genuine. Yet Melissa senses deception. Her trained eye as a gemologist catches inconsistencies in Lamuna's story. The merchant's ring looks distinctly older, and its vibrant color comes from chrome, which creates inclusions. Surely Madame Lamuna, a seasoned jeweler, must know this. These details lead Melissa to one unsettling conclusion. Madame Lamuna must be lying to protect the queen's dignity. Duke Winterfield notices Melissa's troubled look and gently draws her attention back, prompting her to confirm his suspicions. Meanwhile, Melissa worries that if anyone became furious enough to compare the two rings side by side, the truth might still come to light. Before she can dwell on the thought, Duke Winterfield reaches out and gently adjusts her necklace, reassuring her charmingly in more ways than one. His calm yet confident demeanor grounds Melissa back to the present. Then, with effortless poise, he approaches the queen, determined to handle the situation before it escalates any further. Duke Winterfield proposes inviting Madame Lamuna to the upcoming banquet to celebrate their diplomatic ties. The queen agrees, extending a warm invitation, and Lamuna, genuinely flattered, accepts with excitement. The king backs Duke Winterfield's suggestion, welcoming Lamuna and emphasizing the importance of strengthening ties with Asim, while also complimenting the duke's diplomatic finesse. As the king addresses the crowd, wishing them a wonderful night, the atmosphere is lively. However, amidst the chatter, the crown prince looms silently. The king passes by and mutters an insult as he departs, leaving the prince unsettled. I know the crown prince is terrible, but I seriously feel sorry for him. The tension in the air thickens as the crown prince grits his teeth at what the king told him. In a foul mood, he rejects anyone who tries to approach him, even to his fiancée. Meanwhile, Melissa and Madame Lamuna exchange concerns about the strained relationship between the queen and the prince, specifically mentioning the prince's low regard for his cousin and fiancée, Princess Celine Blanchett. Seeking to bridge the gap, Melissa excuses herself to speak with Princess Blanchett. Across the room, Duke Winterfield is caught in a conversation with the queen, yet his eyes follow Melissa out of the room. Madame Lamuna sees this and infers the implications of their relationship. As Melissa catches up to Princess Blanchett outside the palace and away from the crowd, the princess apologizes for a past discourtesy. Melissa, however, redirects the conversation, expressing concern for Princess Blanchett's well-being after witnessing how harshly the crown prince treated her. Gosh, I take that back. The prince is horrible. The princess, feeling shunned and trapped in her privileged yet suffocating sheltered life, finds herself sobbing at Melissa's empathy. Melissa offers comfort, creating a moment of connection. From the balcony, Duke Winterfield watches this unfold, and he smiles as he decides to let the two women share their moment. Meanwhile, Madame Lamuna approaches the crown prince, attempting to engage him in conversation. He tries to evade her, but she persists, asking if his betrothal was arranged. His dismissive response reveals his annoyance. Lamuna, seemingly unperturbed, wonders if this is customary in Annabelle, drawing a parallel to the Winterfields. The prince is taken aback, recalling Duke Winterfield's prior remark about their love match. Oh no, what is this woman on about? Why do I feel like she's planning something? Madame Lamuna's implications shock him further. She casually mentions that the Duchess doesn't appear to be in love with her husband, leaving the prince appalled and questioning everything he thought he knew about the Duke and Duchess Winterfield's relationship. The prince stands in shock, grappling with Madame Lamuna's audacious assertions about the Duke and Duchess Winterfield's relationship. Her casual dismissal of royal affairs grates on him, yet her insight into his and the Duke's rivalry for the throne catches his attention. Madame Lamuna observes Melissa's focus on Princess Celine and the ongoing issue, rather than her husband. She takes it as a sign that Melissa is barely in love with the Duke. Her conclusion makes the prince pause, tightening his grip on his emotions. He reflects on how strange it is that Duke Winterfield's love match has surfaced amidst such turmoil. The thought unsettles him further, prompting him to excuse himself from his conversation with Madame Lamuna. Outside, the prince finds Melissa and Princess Celine seated on a bench, their heads bent together in quiet conversation. Without hesitation, he confronts Melissa, expressing disbelief that her marriage to the Duke is anything but contractual. His bluntness takes her by surprise, and she struggles to maintain her composure. Princess Celine looks on, confused, as Melissa deflects the conversation, insisting that the prince should be more attentive to his fiancée. Yet, as he glances at Celine, the prince is struck by her tear-stained cheeks, realizing her distress. Celine's vulnerability draws out Melissa's empathy, allowing her to voice her discomfort with how the prince has treated her. The prince defends himself, claiming their engagement is merely a familial obligation and that he harbors no romantic feelings for Celine. The prince clarifies that he shares no romantic ties with the red-haired lady that Melissa has previously spotted with him. If Melissa disapproves of her, he declares, he would gladly sever that connection. Why would you say that? This prince's feelings is becoming even more obvious. This assertion leaves Melissa perplexed. She questions how her sentiments relate to the prince's romantic entanglements. Our question exactly! Before the tension can escalate, Duke Winterfield appears, calling for Melissa with a smile that cuts through the heavy tension. His arrival shifts the atmosphere, drawing the prince's glare. As the Duke and Melissa leave, the prince remains silent, pondering the revelations of that night. Inside their room, the Duke offers Melissa a drink, keen to discuss her encounter with the prince. Just as she begins to respond, Duke Winterfield leans in, holding her face gently. What? Is this it? But the prince simply holds her, and as they pull back, Duke Winterfield cradles Melissa's face with a gentle touch, his gaze soft yet intent. He reflects on the royal family's lives, confiding how the royal family members seem so unhappy, and shares that Princess Blanchett once hinted the prince hadn't always been so troubled. When Melissa inquires further, the Duke kneels, searching her eyes, and softly praises her compassion and lovingness. With sincerity, he asks if her feelings toward him ever extend beyond their contract. He shares that she has grown beyond her initial role in his plans, capturing his thoughts and heart. Reflecting on a recent ball, he reveals how he couldn't focus, his mind entirely on her. He also recounts how he felt when he thought she might have been harmed during the attack in their manor, admitting his anger was driven by fear for her safety. The Duke reaffirms his feelings for Melissa, his eyes soft with longing as he gently twirls a lock of her hair. His voice barely a whisper. He asks if he may kiss her, his gaze full of hope as he waits for her response. Melissa is struck with realization and her thoughts swirl, aware she should turn away, yet held in place by her conflicting emotions. She recalls the expression on the Duke's face at the ball, and despite her initial resolve to reject and push him away, she hesitates. Distraught, Melissa can't bring herself to do it. The Duke waited patiently with a soft look in his eyes. Caught in his gaze, the Duke softly brushes her lips with his thumb before leaving in once more. She flinches, but he gently pulls her back. Without breaking the kiss, he brushes her hair aside while carefully setting her on the bed, parting only briefly before he looks at her with an intent, softened expression. Later, as they lay side by side, Melissa quietly asks when his feelings began. He sidesteps the question with a slight laugh, admitting he's not quite sure but knows it happened well before he realized it. In a quieter tone, he acknowledges he owes her an answer now, though his fear lingers that she might leave him if she knew everything. The Duke reflects on her earlier comment about the royal family's unhappiness, admitting it resonates with him. Despite this, he feels selfish for keeping her close, gripping her hands as if to keep her grounded beside him. Watching her reaction, he confesses he knows she'll seek the truth herself if he doesn't offer it. He starts leaning closer with a smile, holding her gaze as he readies to share the secrets weighing on his heart. In the palace, a woman with striking red hair angrily confronts the servants about the prince's absence. Just as her frustration mounts, the announcement of the prince's arrival cuts through the tension. He steps into the room with a stern expression, casting a heavy silence over the room. The prince's arrival is tense as a red-haired woman hurries to embrace him, yearning for his attention. She reaches to touch his face, but he coldly slaps her hand away, leaving her stunned. She questions why he has become so cold, her suspicion rising as she wonders if Princess Blanchett has said something to him. The prince's gaze hardens as he dismisses her, barely concealing his disdain. Once an object of his mild affection, she now stands discarded, her attempts to reach him met with only a cold, indifferent cruelty. He informs her that her father may proceed with his ambitions, signaling that her role in his life has come to an end. Her composure falters, voice trailing in confusion as she grapples with his sudden detachment, while his unyielding tone leaves no doubt. She was never destined to hold any lasting place by his side. As her carriage waits outside, she pauses, clutching her dress, unwilling to leave just yet. In disbelief, she tells herself he must be exhausted or moody, convinced that someone else must have influenced his sudden change. Her mind circles back to Princess Blanchett as a possible culprit, but she quickly dismisses the notion, knowing the princess would hardly dare challenge him. Frustrated, she bites her lip, concluding it has to be someone else, but the uncertainty gnaws at her all the same. Inside his chambers, the prince locks the door and turns to a servant, quietly discussing plans. He's troubled by recent revelations, pondering the motives of Duke Winterfeld and Duchess Melissa, particularly the rumors surrounding the postponement of the exhibition of the royal treasures to coincide with the arrival of Eastern envoys. He considers the implications of this timing, plotting how best to use the situation to his advantage. The prince's thoughts drift as he muses on Melissa's background. Though lacking wealth, her gemology expertise is undeniable, yet he questions why the Duke would marry someone with so little influence. He suddenly pieces it together, convinced the Duke has a hidden agenda tied to the royal exhibition. The prince commands his servant to assemble an inspection team, convinced something pivotal is about to unfold. He resolves to uncover Duke Winterfeld's schemes, believing that aligning the envoy's visit with his own plans will secure his position as the rightful heir and undermine both the Queen and the Duke. His thoughts turn to Melissa Winterfeld, and he fantasizes about a scandal that would erupt if the Duke lost her, relishing the potential chaos. Unbeknownst to him, the red-haired lady listens intently from outside the door. At the Winterfeld residence, Melissa received a long-awaited letter, her heart racing with anticipation as she realizes contact has finally been made. Melissa sighs in relief after reading the letter, her mind replaying Duke Winterfeld's confessions from the previous night. She recalls his solemn revelation about the royal family's troubled history. The king seized the throne by force, but as an illegitimate heir, he lacks support among the aristocrats. He married the queen to secure her bloodline's magic, critical in the kingdom's war with Asim. Since she's bore him no children, the king fathered an heir with a maid, Roland, neglected by the queen despite his role as crown prince until he came of age. As Melissa considers Duke Louis's words, her mind sharpens on the prince's recent moves. She recalls Louis's theory that the prince plans to fake magical abilities by stealing holy relics, using an unwitting noblewoman gemologist as cover. Once his plan is set in motion, Louis warns, she may be discarded for knowing too much. Louis had confided he'd protect her to ensure she would testify if needed, taking her hand and giving her a reassuring squeeze. He suggested she appear familiar with the prince from the ball, flashing a gentle and reassuring smile. He assured her, resting his head on the pillow beside her and promising to handle the situation. He'd later pulled Melissa close, murmuring with a smile that he wouldn't mind hearing her answer to his love confession earlier that night. Melissa's heart skipped as he hinted at his growing affection, leaving her flustered. Louis's voice is warm and tender as he murmurs that he wouldn't take offense if she needed space. But as his arms tighten around her, his intentions grow bolder. His soft words turn into a question as he leans closer, brushing her ear with a light, playful nibble. He leaned closer, his gaze locked on hers, and asked if she would agree to more than just a kiss. He hovers over her, anticipation flickering between them as her heartbeat races. Back in the present, Melissa snaps out of her thoughts, brushing off her flush when her servant enters. After confirming her response to the letter, she rises to meet an unexpected visitor. Lady Razier, the red-haired noblewoman who overheard the Crown Prince's secrets. When Lady Razier unexpectedly arrives, Melissa is caught off guard, questioning her unannounced visit. With a teasing grin, Lady Razier dismisses any past hostility, curtsying and declaring her desire to mend their strained relationship. She praises Melissa's new title within the royal family, apologizing for any past rudeness and claiming it's only fitting to be civil. While Melissa remains cautious, recalling the prince's offer to distance himself from anyone who disrespects her, Lady Razier's apparent sincerity softens her guard, and she decides to engage further in conversation. On the way to the banquet, Melissa reflects on her interaction with Lady Razier, hinting to Louis that Razier shared insights about the prince's schemes. Lady Razier had carefully voiced suspicions, even inquiring if Melissa had been blessed by the holy relic, as only the family could. Razier laughed off her jealousy, feigning innocence about the relic's secrecy, which caught Melissa off guard. In the carriage afterward, Melissa brushes off Louis's questions, explaining she might be overthinking. Upon arriving at the palace, Louis takes her hand, guiding her confidently inside. As they mingle at the banquet, Melissa senses the prince's gaze, meeting his smirk as he proposes to the king that they move the kingdom's treasure exhibit to coincide with the Asamian envoy's visit, impressing all with his proposal. Then, the queen turns to Melissa with a request. She'd like her to represent the palace as a gemologist for the exhibit. As Melissa considers the queen's request, she's unaware that her wine glass is being tended to by a passing attendant. Reminding herself of her duty, Melissa accepts with a composed smile. Yet, as the banquet toasts to prosperity, Melissa interrupts with a cough, leaving her splattered with wine. As Melissa's wine glass shatters to the floor, she realizes with dread that she's bleeding, her vision blurring as Duke Louis's alarmed gaze meets hers. She sways, collapsing, and he barely catches her, calling her name in desperation. What a tragedy! A doctor confirms her worst fear. She's been poisoned. Duke Louis demands an antidote, but the doctor's grim response, that there's no remedy, renders him silent. Suspicion grows as the Duke confronts the prince, suggesting that whoever poisoned Melissa must be familiar with the Holy Relic investigation. The prince's mind races, recalling faces, Lady Razier and Princess Blanchett. His shock is evident as Louis insists on taking Melissa home, unwilling to risk her life further in the palace. The prince stands frozen as Duke Louis, carrying Melissa, exits and slams the door. Louis's accusations subtly suggest his involvement, or at least his indirect fault, given that his interference with the holy relics might have exposed Melissa to this attack. Later, back at the Winterfield estate, a distressed Louis oversees Melissa's care as her condition worsens. In his desperation, he calls for Ian, who warns him that saving Melissa could come at a high cost, and asks if he's still willing to take the risk. Duke Louis meets Ian's conditions without hesitation, determined to sacrifice his own life force to help Melissa recover. Ian warns him of the consequences, potentially shortening his life. But Louis is resolute, feeling responsible for bringing her into this mess. Ian proceeds with the ritual, transferring some of Louis's strength to Melissa, noting that the rest depends on her own resilience. As Louis waits anxiously by her side, Ian reminds him that Melissa's strength is what drew him to her. Ian suggests that Duke Louis should rest, but since the Duke worries for Melissa, he refuses to leave her side. His fingers brush her cheek tenderly as he whispers a heartfelt plea for her to return, and vows to be there when she opens her eyes, unwilling to let her wake alone. Meanwhile, at the prince's residence, he gathers his staff, condemning the poisoning at the royal banquet as an act of high treason. One servant, recalling a suspicious unfamiliar maid, explains that only well-vetted staff are permitted within the palace during banquets. Still, he confesses that he's certain it was a new face. A woman who handled the wine service, that stood out. He's haunted by a particular image, a resemblance to Lady Razier, the figure whom he saw discreetly transporting wine into the banquet hall. Enraged, the prince storms to confront Lady Razier, finding her waiting with an unsettling grin. The prince, with a dark scowl, confronts Lady Razier directly, demanding to know if she was responsible for the poisoning. Razier, smirking, confirms it was her and hints that it was only possible because of his own machinations, recounting how she simply carried out his underlying wishes by eliminating the threat the Duchess posed to his royal ambitions. Razier's words drip with malice as she reminds Crown Prince Roland of the precarious situation he's in. She insinuates that had the Duchess been blessed by the holy relic, the poison wouldn't have harmed her. Razier clearly suggests that her potential testimony could expose his secrets regarding the theft of the holy relic and the blessing ceremony. The prince, angered and threatened, tries to dismiss her, aware that if the Duchess dies, Louis Winterfield will bear the brunt of the scandal, a fool for not protecting his wife. Prince Roland's disbelief surfaces as he realizes Razier's manipulations were for his benefit. Her audacity enrages him, and he insists she will not testify, asserting the severity of her crimes against royalty. When he orders the guards to take her away, her frantic pleas echo in the air. She struggles against their grip as they drag her out of the room. Just then, a servant delivers grim news. The Duchess has passed away. Please don't be true! The prince stands, stunned, emotions churning beneath his composed exterior. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!